What's happening, sports fans? We welcome you back to another episode of the Gonzaga Nation podcast, where we are going to try our best and fight against the problem that every millennial suffers with: mediocre internet connection. So I apologize if one of us seems to be pausing for dramatic effect right now. We know what we're talking about. We're not stalling for information. It's just us ducking out to get better internet. That being said, Dan Dickau joins us as always to be our guiding light in the off season. Dan, I want to talk about a couple of different things. There continues to actually be some trickling in of transfers and recruit. Like, it's not just all hypotheticals. Real things are happening there. You want to play a little bit of schedule sleuth, which I think is cool. We can start piecing that together. And then let's talk about some player development. Where do you want to start?
Let's go new players. I mean, the transfer portal is such a hot topic for a long time, and Gonzaga's had some terrific news. Khalif Battle, in particular, as of late, all the guys staying at Gonzaga, namely Hickman, Nemhart, Ben Gregg, Ike. I mean, you go up and down the list. Dusty Stromer, Braden Huff, June, guys stayed around. And then you bolster the lineup with a guy like Khalif Battle. You pick up the one that we haven't talked about yet, Emmanuel Innocenti. I believe I'm pronouncing that right, from Tarleton State. Now, you probably are thinking, well, Tarleton State, what the heck? Gonzaga played them, beat them a couple of years ago in the kennel. But that's a good program because Billy Gillespie is coached them in the right way, defensive minded. But Innocenti is a unique prospect. He is a freshman who started more than 30 games a season ago for Tarleton, who was kind of in the middle of the pack in the WAC. And we touched on the WAC last week when the news came out about Grand Canyon and Seattle U. But the WAC's a solid league, but not enough's known about the WAC just because they got such bad media rights deals. So you don't really see these teams. But when you dive in a little bit deeper on Innocenti, he's an interesting prospect. As mentioned, started over 30 games as a freshman, averaged over 30 minutes a game as a freshman. Now, if you look at the overall total landscape of college basketball, you're not seeing a lot of that because guys are transferring and programs are bringing in experienced players that can step in and play right away. So he stepped into Tarleton State right away, and he played big minutes, played a big role. Now, the numbers aren't going to jump out at you when you see he only averages about 6.5 points, 6.5 rebounds or so a game. But you dive a little deeper. Shooting percentages aren't great, but a lot of times you can't base a player based on his shooting percentages. What style do they play on offense? Does his skill set fit that style? But when you watch him, when I talked to a couple assistant coaches in the WAC and got a feel for him, they said he's a really good player. He's got a really high motor. He's got a good feel for it defensively. From day one, he was good. And he got better as the season went on, and that's kind of been his calling card to earn minutes early in his college career at Tarleton State. The coaches that I spoke with said that he's got a lot of promise on the offensive end of the floor. Doesn't try to do too much. Understands what his role is, where he fit at least in with Tarleton State. Now, I would imagine, coming from Italy and understanding the European style that Gonzaga plays a lot like. He probably sees where he can help this ball club. Now, where that fits in regards to how many minutes he'll play next year or whatnot, that's to be determined, and that'll be determined over the course of summer workouts and fall practices. But I really like what I see in bringing him to this roster. I see size on the wing, which has given Gonzaga problems at times. I see toughness. I see defensive abilities. I see activity on the glass, and I see a guy that, hey, if you've started that many games early in your career and you're willing to go challenge for playing time at a high program like a Gonzaga, you're built with a makeup of wanting to go get it, and so I really like this addition for Gonzaga.
So, Dan, you talk about Tarleton State and you talk about it, maybe isn't up at the top five, Power Five level, but I also kind of get maybe the feeling that college basketball's landscape is shifting. Easy enough for me to say. Tarleton State is almost the new JC and or schools like that because those top Power Five, whatever type schools are, like you said, they're bringing in transfers. They're not investing as much in freshmen. The new spots for freshmen to go are to schools that are a little bit, a step down, a numerical jump down. So I love the path that he's taken of go get your playing time, prove yourself. And like you said, he's kind of got that dog in him. It seems like he's exactly the filler piece right now. He's not going to necessarily come in and like disrupt and cause stress over, is he going to take that wing spot from somebody or anything? But he seems like that perfect, if you were going to create a guy in a lab to add that isn't going to ruffle any feathers, but just add net positives, it's this guy. Yes?
Yeah, I think you're very spot on there. You mentioned, likening Tarleton State to a junior college. I mean, you could essentially say college basketball is becoming very similar to junior college basketball across the country. And the reason being is the player movement. I mean, in junior college, right, you got at most 3 years, and that's if you redshirt, but it's a 2-year stop. But many junior college players are one school and then another junior college the next year. At least that's my experience in talking to a lot of players that have gone that route, because they're always looking for something better and different. But when you made that comment, it kind of spurred me to think about this coaching carousel that has happened over the last couple of years. And Gonzaga has luckily not had to deal with that, except when assistants have headed off. But I think one of the things when you say that, and my mind goes to coaching carousel, is the fact that I'm waiting for a big time junior college coach at one of the national level JCs to get a shot at a Division One, maybe in the WCC, maybe in the Big Sky, where then they move up and progress quickly, because junior college coaches are used to wearing 100 hats at a time. They've had to balance roster flexibility and movement year in and year out. They've had to manage all these different things that are becoming the new norm over the last 3-4 years in college basketball. So just kind of wanted to side note that after the comment that you made.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right that we focus so much on college basketball through the prism of the players, and sometimes, especially at Gonzaga, given damn you, Coach Few, and your stability of just being here for an unprecedented run of success. But yeah, it's also the coaches doing the exact same thing, and the coaches one can actually lead to the players one kind of hand in hand, because if a coach recruits a player, leaves to another school, like we already have seen it. A couple of different times in the last few years with some major guys aiming to go one place and then pivoting to go where their coach ends up winding up. Let's talk a little schedules. Some of the dates are starting to come out, and it's the scheduling to me is a weird thing, how different sports handle it. Like football rolls out like schedule release day is a national holiday, and schools are doing different things. And college basketball is kind of like, you want us to, I don't know. Okay. I got dates for 2 of the games. Here, we'll get back to you on the rest of them. And then they start like rolling it out, and then like 4 hours before the season starts, they're like, okay, here are all the league games. Now buzz off. But you've already got some of the dates out for next year of Gonzaga. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, you're exactly right. The college basketball season always is kind of a trickle out, right? You understand there's the MTEs, the big time tournaments. Gonzaga is going to be in the battle for Atlantis, which is, become one of the premier events. There's already been shuffling and movement in that in the last month or so, because Creighton dropped out a week or so back because they want to play in the NIL $1 million payout tournament in Vegas around the same time frame, so they couldn't do both. So somebody filled in for them. But when you look at the field for Battle Atlantis, Arizona, Indiana, Louisville, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Davidson, Providence, it's pretty darn good. So the time frame of that, it's right around it's feast week, right around Thanksgiving. But then when you look big picture stuff, Craziness in the Kennel is always that first weekend of October, when it's fall family weekend, I think, for Gonzaga's students on campus. The only 2 games that I have truly seen on out there in the Twitter sphere for having legitimate dates set would be December 7th, Kentucky, and that one's in Seattle this year, and then December 14th, UConn at MSG. Those are the only legitimate dates that I see as of now that are out there. I'm sure if I miss it, Cole Forsman, our journalist who stays in tune with everything, will add in a story the other game dates that are truly set. But there's a UCLA game that has just been agreed upon, which I think is tremendous. I know that's one of your alma maters.
Uh,
UW
I am
game is
I am
still
done
on
with
from
being
all
paid
intents and
to watch.
purposes.
I'm done with being. Sorry to interrupt you, but I am done with enjoying being paid to watch UCLA lose to Gonzaga. I just don't want it anymore.
Yeah,
It's
it's kind of
so
become
sad.
a rite of passage every college basketball season in the regards that those teams play and Gonzaga wins. But the UW game is for all intents and purposes still on. And then at San Diego State's going to be another good game. I mean, they were in the national title game 2 seasons ago, went back to the Sweet 16. They've got some roster movement that's outgoing that they've got to figure out. Lamont Butler, four-year point guard. He went to Kentucky. They've had other guys that have headed out. So it'll be interesting to see what Brian Dutcher and staff do to bolster the lineup. But that's such a good coaching staff. That's going to be a tremendous game with San Diego State
SDSU is
down
actually
there
on
in
day
Viejas.
one WCC edition. They picked up Wayne McKinney from USD to
I
fill in for Lamont Butler at the point guard position there.
I did see that. Good catch on that. He's a good point guard. He brings them experience, toughness in the backcourt, a willingness to defend. Little small, but San Diego State is willing to think outside of the box for characteristics if you play defense, if you adhere to what they want, how they want to play culturally, philosophically, and I think Wayne McKinney fits that bill. And then the other big date to look at, and it's not any particular team. It's when the WCC rolls out their schedule to find out what they're going to do with Oregon State, Washington State being in the league. I know there's been conversations of, do you play everybody twice? Do you play half the schools or three-quarters of the school twice? And are there going to be a school or two that you only play once? So I don't know if it's going to be a 16, 18, 20 game schedule. That's to be determined. 2 years from now, when Grand Canyon and Seattle U are in the league, that's going to be when it's really interesting to see how that schedule shakes up. But we're talking about schedule at hand, and we have a few ideas, with dates that I mentioned. But I think the biggest and the most fun one is going to be seeing which side of the bracket Gonzaga is going to be in with the Atlanta. So who their first round opponent will be, and who would that potential second round opponent be? I know a lot of people are going to want to see Arizona. But I would imagine, just looking at the list, I would imagine Gonzaga and Arizona are going to be on opposite ends of the spectrum, so they could potentially play in a title game down there. But we'll see when that bracket comes out later this summer.
You can't get much harder than they did with starting with Purdue this last season. So, yes, thankfully Arizona might be on the other side of that bracket. I will go down that tangent a little bit with you and say that as a person who grew up as a Pac 8, 10, 12 type of person in terms of my fandom, I like the splitting it north south type vibes of, if you have a WCC, that you can um, find a way to regionalize it, to really say, hey, look, we're going to make sure that the fans can go from Seattle to Spokane on a fixed yearly rivalry type of thing, and not have to be like, okay, like, missed them this year, next year we'll come back there. Like try and develop some of those ones where you can allow the fans to have access easily to to travel around and get to those games, because it's good basketball. There's no reason why they should have to be like, hey, Seattle fans, you got to go to Arizona, and Spokane fans, you got to go to San Diego. Like, I say regionalize it. I say, let Gonzaga have its biggest game, like the SDSU, the UCLA. Great, those are huge rivalries outside of the conference, but in the conference, make it a very familial and close knit kind of thing. Anything else on the schedules, or can we get to some off-season player development?
No, I mean, the big thing is, it comes up every year. People get frustrated with some of the games that get put on Gonzaga's schedule. But look, putting a schedule together is absolutely an impossible bear each and every year for, the staff and Coach Few, because, you're putting these marquee games, Kentucky, UConn, UCLA, San Diego State, on the schedule. Then you're putting a marquee MTE like the Battle for Atlantis, or last year the Maui. You're putting these on the schedule, and you also have to have your home non-conference games. And yes, you want to be able to bring in high-level opponents, but at some time you also have to allow your team to learn through playing these big-time programs, but then also learn through, successful opportunities in wins against lesser opponents.
You need the occasional
And
tomato.
it's that fine line of balancing who those non-conference home games are. I mean, yes, there have been games in years past. Last year, I think they played, I want to say it was Chicago State, or 2 years ago, where they were like second to last in KenPom and net rankings. Those ones are difficult for fans to see. But if you look at some of the other non-conference that Gonzaga's had at home that have turned out to be really good resume bolsters, Yale was a great example last year. Nobody knew just how good Yale was. They ended up winning the Ivy League tournament, and they won their first game in the NCAA tournament over Auburn. So there's a fine line about how you put together a schedule, because you want these marquee games to really bolster your net and your KenPom. You want games that challenge you, that if the team really does good, it's going to bolster your numbers in the long run. Like, look at UCLA, USC last year. You thought those games were going to bolster your numbers. It went in the opposite because they ended up both being really bad. Yale was a better win. And so you got to try to find the games that, are against good teams in their leagues that might have a chance to win their league, advance to the NCAA tournament. But you also
On
want
top
to
of
stay
all this,
away
you're also
from that middle of the road team in the Mountain West, bringing them into your gym, where Mountain West was good last year. I think 6 teams in the NCAA tournament. What would happen if a Colorado State came to Gonzaga and had a tremendous night and beat Gonzaga, kind of like what LMU did a couple of years ago? So there's a really fine line of putting together your schedule. You want to give yourselves opportunities to bolster your numbers, and not have too many opportunities where there could be one that comes up. You don't perform well that night, it catches you, and then it really hurts you in the long run. So I'm kind of dancing around the schedule thing because it's such a fine line about putting it together. I think Gonzaga's done a tremendous job of putting together a schedule that checks all boxes. Tremendous non-conference neutral site games, enough home and homes like the Kentucky series, some great MTEs like the Battle for Atlantis, the Maui, and then when you can get regional games in home gyms like UW, like San Diego State, I think those are tremendous ads.
Yeah. Playing 15 to 20 non-conference games against all top 25 schools, exhausting, and is not good for any basketball program. I think another thing that you didn't touch on that, to me, everyone always forgets in this whole scheduling thing is it's not a one-way scheduling thing. Like,
100%.
other school has to be available also. So there's probably a handful of games every year where Few and Gonzaga approach a school saying, hey, we got these 3 or 4 days available. Any chance you are? And they're like, sorry, the next time we have those 3 days available is 2036 because we've made
Yeah,
out.
you're exactly right. I mean, it's the timing and the schedule for both programs. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that the average fan doesn't know. Like, for example, Boise State would be a tremendous non-conference rivalry game for Gonzaga. That game is never going to happen because Leon Rice and Mark Few are really good friends. Coaches don't want to put losses on other coaches that are their friends' resumes when they're trying to, pull for them to get to the NCAA tournament. So lots of things that go into scheduling, and as more things kind of be solidified throughout the summer months, we will be the first to kind of comment on them and bring them to you.
The humanizing of the post game hug there that I'm visualizing, like you said, Leon and Coach View, they're friends, and just having to go up and hug them and say sorry about beating you by 20 in your building, buddy. Yeah, that I totally had not thought about that, but that constraint of a personal and professional friendship where you try to do that, but then you end up hurting somebody's professional career aspirations. Let's talk players. Dan, you run an amazingly successful off-season gym. If I told you, I guess it's an in-season gym as well, but for the purposes of this conversation, let's talk off-season. If I told you, Dan, you're going to get to work with the Gonzaga players. In the hypothetical that I brought up to you in show prep, I said pick one, but you said, hey, I'm taking all of them to my camp right now, and we're going to go work them. So you get a week right now. I just give you for a week or for a month or for whatever it is, for the all the off season, you get to dive in deep and really work with these guys. What are you doing? How are you, Dan Dickau, the skills trainer, the motivator, the thinker, the whatever you want to say about, because this can be shooting, this can be mentality, this can be athleticism, anything, carte blanche. How are you working with the team this year if it was your off season to work with them?
Well, first off, full disclosure, I think Gonzaga has one of the best player
Oh,
development
yeah, hey.
staffs in all the country. And that's that. And I get to a lot of practices, shoot arounds throughout the year, and I see programs that in my eyes do it right. I see programs in my eyes that leave a lot to be desired, for player development. And so with that being said, there's always things that players can work on. And I think one of the things is player development is you have to look at what's going to prepare you for near-term success, which is at Gonzaga and this upcoming season, as well as long-term success individually as a player. And I think one of the things the NCAA has done such a poor job of doing is allowing players to get outside the box of the program they're currently with, because they've allowed off-season practices, off-season workouts. So now these college coaches have access to the kids nearly year-round by making them take summer school, by having them on campus running practices and really kind of having their pulse on everything. It's good for a lot of kids, but I think it also detracts from some kids to really kind of take ownership of their career and really be creative and forceful to really move their career path and the needle of their career forward. So with that being said, I mean, I think as a former player myself who kind of prided myself on player development every single summer, there's always some things that you kind of have to have key components of that. These are your strengths. You got to keep working on them. You got to keep refining them so that those are continuously the foundation of what you do, and then trying to add some different things. So, if we just go down the list, I mean, I think for we'll start in the backcourt. Ryan Nembhard, I think his ability to be creative with the dribble and his passing ability are top tier amongst college basketball. So keep finding ways to draw out that creativity. I think the one thing is everybody can see it. Early in the season, he didn't shoot it great. And so just repping out the correct three-point shots so that your balance, your footwork is locked in and dialed in on every possession, every rep, and making every shot count. I think one other thing in regards to that are important for any smaller guard is the ability to finish and finish under control. A lot of times early in the season, he'd get in the paint and he would be off balance with his finishes. So you do have to have that same hand, same foot runner finish, the scoop shot. But you got to understand that the timing and the spacing and when to shoot that. The best example that I can use in the NBA game right now in patience of finishing is Jalen Brunson. He's not an overly explosive athlete vertically or quickness wise, but he plays off at 2 feet. He plays off of angles. So I think that's something that Ryan Nembhard could work on in regards to patience and finishing in the paint, the creativity, finishing with both hands, cadence with footwork into those finishes. You stay in the backcourt with Nolan Hickman. He proved his consistency as a shooter. His pick and roll reads really improved over the course of the year. I think his finishing as well is something that can add that next level to him. I think the ability to make passes in pick and roll situations showed progression over the course of the year. I think that's something that can continue to grow. And that a lot of times comes with drill work. It also comes with just playing pickup, playing free, playing against older players, going back to Seattle and playing in the Jamal Crawford Summer Pro-Am, even though I heard the crossover is not going this year. So where are the good runs in Seattle when he's back, which I'm sure he's a part of. You move to some of the other guys, Steele Venters. For him, it's a summer of getting healthy. And then I think, his shooting ability has been shown at the college level. What does he do to add some diversity in how he gets to his threes? Are they all space, moving into space, open threes off of the post being doubled? Are they pin down threes? Are they movement threes where, you're flaring? Are there DHO threes? Are they catch and shoot in transition threes? Trying to really work on that and figure that out. And then cutting, Corey Kispert became tremendous at cutting at that 45 angle when Gonzaga went small and he was at the 4. That's something that I think that could be worked on. Ben Gregg, he did so many great things last year, trying to find ways to kind of, be creative as a scorer. Pick and pop, put the ball on the deck, get your shoulder down, get by guys, changing up your footwork once you start to get by guys to create space and then explode through contact and angles. All things that, are little things, but when they are worked on, they become big things and become separators. Graham Ike, such a dominant low post scorer with the left over the right shoulder, which is normal. Adding that next counter move over his left shoulder, fade away, and then step throughs, fadeaways, whatever it might be. He showed glimpses, but continuing to add, both your go-to move and then your counter, things that really you can kind of adhere to and really kind of be able to consistently go to. I think the ability to quick catch and decision make in short rolls is another area of growth for him. He showed it, throughout the course of the year. I think that Kentucky game was one where he showed that ability to really kind of catch it on the short dive and make decisions. One dribble, a little floater game because he's got such great touch. Braden Huff would be in that similar position. I think the one thing with Braden, he's got such a soft ball when it sits on the rim after he releases it is I'm not too worried about that offensive game, although want to see the ability to drive the closeout a little bit. In a straight line drive and get that shoulder down and by the hip of the defender. But that defensively, player development a lot of times isn't thought of in regards to defense, but it's a big thing. Keeping that offensive player away from a straight line drive attack angle. It's just that first slide or two. I mean, I look back at, Coach Few's always challenged guys on the defensive end in the offseason, and there were times I was a player, my individual workout started with 15 minutes of strictly defensive slide explosion drills. So, I mean, it's not the most fun stuff to do, but it's the stuff that earns you even more trust of your coach. It earns you even more opportunities for minutes, and then it earns you rope within those minutes because maybe you get beat once. Well, maybe it was because of a conceptual thing or closeout angle, but you're still have the faith and the trust of the staff that you're going to slide and stay in front that next step or two. Dusty Stromer, I think, strength is something Adam and Morrison and I talked about in the offseason, but I think, consistency of jump shot, which will get there. I think, shoulder down and attacking on a drive to be able to combat the physical play of a lot of defenses is going to be something that's worked on that I think is going to be important for him. For June, I think it's just minutes in regards to playing pickup in the American style of playing basketball. I see a talented player, skilled, he can shoot it, he's strong, he can drive it. But you saw a player that thought a little bit, when you saw in some different stretches last year. So I think just allowing him to just get comfortable playing in a free-flowing style, and that's a lot of that is playing pickup. I think when you kind of go through the roster as we did there and a couple player development things, there's not a single player on this roster that has a glaring deficiency that needs to be worked on. Each of them have true strengths that I think Coach Few and the staff did a really good job of pulling out last year. And it's just the refining of those strengths and then kind of the working on some of those I don't want to call them negatives because there's really no true negatives in a lot of guys' games.
All of this is brought up just to talk about off-season content more than anything else.
Yeah.
Combined with, I still am pushing that if the Kentucky job opens ever back up, it's all yours. And so we need some stuff on paper that's a resume builder for you so that you know how to handle top tier players. But yeah, no, you bring up a lot of interesting points that to me, it's about delivering information to the basketball fan. You see the game in such a way that I would have never thought that, like, for Park, just go run fives at a local gym and just get more used to this style of play. It's just it's conceptually is very high level stuff that it's hard to sometimes put into words that you do a great job of.
Well, I appreciate it. And on that, there are some guys, this sounds weird. There's some guys that are drill guys. They need to go play pickup, right? They need to learn how to play off of other players and other actions. There are some guys that you put them in a drill and they don't look great. So you got to work on those fundamental basic skills of making sure they understand the spacing and the footwork. But you put them in a pickup setting and you give them some free flowing opportunities. They look tremendous. I think Gonzaga's done a nice job of over the years of teaching guys how to be successful in both areas. And that allows guys when they get in the NBA pre-draft workouts to shine.
Yeah, to me, you bring up when you kind of give that description to me, like that just was it screamed point guards. Like sometimes you like, okay, you can dribble through cones and you can identify, but then you get into the game and it's like, whoa, that guy has a real feel for like how to lead an offense and how did he know to go this, right step there, left hand there. He didn't know that guy. Wasn't even looking. He made that pass. It's like you could have never have seen that just based off of a shuttle run and how well does he listen to coach in terms of like, stay down and keep your hands like, yeah, it's really interesting that basketball just kind of works in that multi-leveled way. But ultimately what you really just need is to get through, like all of us, you just need to get through the off season so you can get the games that matter back at it. Anything else, Dan, before we say goodbye?
No, yesterday we had a good day in the studio here in Spokane. We had somebody that I'm sure a lot of people have heard the name. They've learned what the impact this guy has had on the program over the last 15, 20 years. But they're going to get to hear a little bit more from himself directly. And that was Gonzaga's men's basketball strength coach, Travis Knight. He came in yesterday, had some really good stuff. So that'll be coming out in the next few weeks. And we're getting a couple others on the schedule to get recorded, and then they'll be released. And it's hard to believe we're almost at the end of May already. So before you know it, guys will be back for summer school. We will start talking about Gonzaga players in summer league and the opportunities that are presented to them. One thing we didn't touch about on though was Chet Holmgren was first team all rookie. So congrats to him. So good stuff for Gonzaga Nation right now. We got a lot of good content coming up.
And Nembhard committed or contributed to ending the Knicks season in the most Knicks way possible of having a season ended by losing to a team that had the highest shooting percentage of any playoff game in history. Because that's
absolutely
the Knicks, baby. Beautiful. Absolutely got to love it. Dan, I'm also glad that we got this episode out on air before the actual strength and conditioning coach comes in so that we don't look like absolute fools talking about all this before the real or after the real guy does it. So thank you though for coming in for another week with us. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure you guys all go check out everything that Dan is doing in that studio. And until next time, we'll say see you later, Gonzaga fans.